Every candidate can recite bias versus variance. Far fewer can say what overfitting actually feels like in the numbers, or why making a model bigger sometimes fixes generalization instead of wrecking it. That gap is exactly where this gets interesting. Let's start.
Let's start plainly. What does the bias-variance trade-off actually mean? Not the formula, the intuition.
Bias is error from the model being too simple to capture the real pattern. It's wrong in the same direction every time, no matter the data. Variance is error from the model being too sensitive. Change the training set a little, and it swings to a very different answer. The trade-off is that the knobs that cut one usually feed the other. A more flexible model lowers bias but picks up variance. A simpler one does the reverse. For squared error loss, you can literally write total error as bias squared plus variance plus an irreducible noise floor you can never beat. The picture I keep in my head: high bias is consistently missing the target, high variance is scattering all around it. You're trying to land in the middle, where the model is just flexible enough and no more.
Right, that's the picture. How does overfitting actually show up when you watch training versus validation?
The classic signature: training loss keeps dropping, validation loss flattens, and then starts climbing back up. The gap between the two curves is the tell. The model is memorizing the training set instead of learning the pattern. But here's where people misdiagnose. If the training loss itself never gets low, the model can't even fit the data it has already seen. That is not overfitting. That's bias, or an optimization problem, and reaching for more regularization or a smaller model is exactly the wrong move. You'd be making a too-weak model weaker. So I read the training curve first. Training loss still high? It's underfitting. Give it more capacity or train it better. Training loss low but validation diverging? Now it's variance, and that's when regularization and more data actually earn their keep.
Let's make it concrete. A model is basically perfect on the training set, but poor on new data. Walk me through what you'd change.
Perfect on training, poor on new data is the textbook high variance case, so everything I reach for is about reining in flexibility or feeding it more signal. Cheapest first, more data, or augmentation if I can't get more variance shrinks as the model sees more of the real distribution. Then regularization, weight decay, dropout, early stopping, each one gently penalizes the model for fitting noise. I might cut capacity or add structure I genuinely believe in, so the model can't waste itself memorizing. And I double-check it's genuinely variance, not a data leak or a train test mismatch faking it. What I would not do is just train longer or grow the model blindly. That pushes me further the wrong way. The unifying idea is simple: close the train validation gap, don't widen it.
Now, the one that surprises people. Conventional wisdom says a bigger model means more variance and worse generalization. Is that always true?
No, and this is where the classic U-shaped curve breaks. There's a well-documented effect called double descent. Belkin and colleagues laid it out in 2019, and there's a deep learning version from OpenAI the same year. As you grow a model right up to the point where it can just barely fit the training data exactly, the interpolation threshold, test error, actually spikes and looks terrible. That's the peak the old intuition warns you about. But if you push past it, make the model even more overparameterized, test error comes back down again, often below the best point of the classic curve. So bigger means more variance is only true up to that threshold. Past it, extra capacity plus a little regularization can generalize beautifully, which is a big part of why huge overparameterized networks work at all.
Last one, the clean rule. Give me your default. In practice, how do you actually navigate this trade-off?
My default is to let the data set the ceiling and the validation curve do the steering. I start with a model flexible enough to overfit a little, because if it can't overfit, I don't have a variance problem to manage, I have a bias problem. Once it can, I dial generalization back in with regularization and more data until the validation curve bottoms out. The single most reliable lever is more good data. It lowers variance without touching bias, so it almost never hurts. The trap I avoid is treating bias and variance as one slider you set once. They shift as the model trains, so I diagnose from the curves every time instead of guessing. And I keep the modern caveat in mind. Past the interpolation point, bigger isn't automatically worse, so I don't reflexively shrink a model that's struggling.
So, to pull it together, bias is being too simple and consistently wrong. Variance is being too sensitive and scattered. The skill is reading which one you're fighting from the training and validation curves. A high training loss means bias. give it more power. A low training loss with a widening gap means variance. Regularize and add data. And the modern twist. Past the point a model can just fit the data. Bigger can generalize better, not worse. If this kind of prep helps, like this episode, share it with someone who's interviewing and subscribe to Interview on Your Way. More and better questions are on the way.